Good evening, you're tuning in to AWANI Tonight with me, Farhana Sheikh. Ex-BNS official to be charged in court tomorrow in relation to the Littoral Combat Ships project, and pressure groups urge for more transparency in Pembinaan PFI probe. That's coming up. A former high-ranking bousted naval shipyard Sdn Bhd BNS official will be charged with criminal breach of trust in connection with the Littoral Combat Ship LCS scandal. According to a media invite, the individual will be brought to the Kuala Lumpur Sessions Court tomorrow around 9 a.m. to face the charges. The charges came after the Prime Minister, Datuk Seri Ismail Sabri Yaakob, ordered the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission (MACC) to expedite investigations into the LCS case. On August 4th, the Parliament's Public Accounts Committee (PAC) revealed that BNS, the main contractor for the project, has been paid over 6 billion ringgit, despite none of the ships being completed. PAC said that 1.4 billion ringgit in government allocation for the LCS project had been used for other purposes, including cost overruns. The two-year probe also revealed that the 9 billion ringgit project was awarded to BNS through direct negotiations and was inked in 2014, with no tender being called. The first ship was supposed to be delivered in 2019 and the sixth in 2023. The Health Ministry is seeking for public health expenditure to be increased to 5% of the GDP. Its Minister, Khairi Jamaluddin, said this is to ensure Malaysia has a world-class public health system in the future.
Khairi said the benchmark for public health expenditure in an upper-middle income country is between 4 to 5% of GDP. With Malaysia only allocating 2.59% of GDP for public health expenditure, many people have to queue for services such as magnetic resonance imaging, MRI, or computed tomography, CT scans in government hospitals. He stressed that all ministries are equally important, but some ministries are more important than others. Khairi was speaking at the Health Policy Summit 2022, where he called for bipartisan support for the White Paper on healthcare reforms ahead of its November Parliament tabling.
The Communications and Multimedia Ministry plans to introduce a special application to curb activities related to hacking. Its Minister, Tan Sri Anwar Musa, says a meeting with the application owner will be held overseas soon.
Anwar said he had requested Cybersecurity Malaysia, the National Cybersecurity Specialist Agency, to conduct studies on the application prior to its launch. The anti-hacking application will be available on all gadgets registered in the country. However, Anwar said the question of payment has yet to be decided. Should there be a charge, he assured it would be set at a reasonable price.
The hearing for the final appeal to overturn a graft conviction for former Prime Minister Datuk Seri Najib Razak began at the Federal Court today. The court has scheduled hearings until August 26 to hear the appeal.
Najib's new defence team has also sought to adduce new evidence, citing conflict of interest by High Court Judge Datuk Muhammad Nazlan Muhammad Ghazali, who convicted Najib in July 2020. According to lead counsel Hisham Teh Potek, the judge had failed to disclose his previous role as General Counsel and Company Secretary of Maybank. He added that facts related to Maybank's engagement as 1MDB strategic advisor were not supplied to the defence at the time of the trial. The 5-member panel of judges will likely decide whether to allow the defence's motion tomorrow. Najib was previously sentenced to 12 years in jail after being found guilty on 7 counts of criminal breach of trust, money laundering and abuse of position involving 42 million ringgit of funds from former 1MDB subsidiary SRC International Sdn Bhd. The Court of Appeal upheld the conviction last December.
Further probes and updates on Malaysia Anti-Corruption Commission's investigation into a government-linked company called Pembinaan PFI Sdn Bhd should be made public. The Centre to Combat Corruption and Cronyism Chairman, Professor Dr. Edmund Terence Gomez, said it is about time these updates were given since MACC began their investigations into the company 4 years ago.
We have a policy abused by the government. Who paid for it? EPF. EPF is not supposed to pay for it because the policy is PFI, Private Finance Initiative, which means private sector must pay. So why did EPF give this money? And then EPF gives this money to a very dubious GLC, which has got no employees, 25 billion ringgit given by EPF to a dubious GLC, which then distributes contracts without any knowledge, any public knowledge. And this is not PFI. PFI means private sector pays, but this one is part of the procurement process, and they dish out contracts. And the contracts are not well done, and nobody knows about it. And how do they pay it back? They abuse the Federal Lands Commission, which owns all the lands, which gives them land as collateral. And the Federal Lands Commissioner must pay them, Pembinaan PFI, a rental for their own land. Complete abuse of government resources.
Terence explained how the PFI projects were implemented through off-budget government loans and awarded without open tenders to companies that did not cover any costs on their own.
Now, the way that Pembinaan PFI works is it's off-budget. Off-budget means it's not in Parliament and nobody knows really what is happening. This means ministers can commission projects, use the Pembinaan PFI money to give out the projects which gets implemented very quickly. It's a very good way for ministers to get things done quickly, build hospitals or build schools or rectify problems, infrastructure problems quickly. It's all approved by the cabinet. So they too knew that this system can be abused. So that's when we knew there's no political will to stop this. It doesn't matter which government is in power. It doesn't matter because this is a system they can abuse to get things done quickly, outside the radar screen, no public scrutiny. They don't have to go and get permission from Parliament to do it. So what this means is, this is a system that benefits the ministers.
Pembinaan PFI Sdn Berhad is a GLC that was reportedly created to implement private finance initiatives. PFIs are a form of public-private partnerships where public projects are financed by private sector concessionaries who then get repaid over the concession period. Despite several reports being lodged on the issue over the past few years, no concrete action has been taken so far. Therefore, Terence stressed how important it is to look into the abuse and corruption involving procurement process in the country.
We also realized that when Pakistan came to power, that they had made a report to MACC. This was 4 years ago. MACC had not acted on it. We know the PAC had a meeting on this in 2015. Day 2, nothing happened from the report from PAC. So reports kept coming out. Edge reported on it. PAC did an investigation and said we must look into this. Ong Kian Ming, who was the Deputy Minister of Trade at the time, also made a report at MACC. Nothing came out of it. And we felt that something fundamentally wrong was going on here. This money was still continuing to be abused. That EPF money was still being abused. So we felt we needed to do a proper in-depth study to find out what exactly was going on. We must seize the opportunity to bring about all these reforms that we've been talking about, including transparency in the way projects are awarded, and to stop the OSC's use in the procurement process. Then we clean up the government. We clean up the government, and we also save a lot of scarce resources which we don't have from being wasted to give to as more practices of patronage, political patronage. So this is the time. This is the time to do all this. This is the time to seize the moment and go in and expose all these things and bring about the changes we want.
We will go for a quick break. Stay with us.
Keluarga ini membayar RM290 untuk satu malam di hotel. Keluarga ini membayar RM240 semalam untuk bilik yang sama. Bagaimana? Trivago memaparkan harga daripada ratusan laman tempahan di seluruh dunia, memudahkan anda membandingkan tawaran. Hotel Trivago.
COVID-19 memperlihatkan kepada kita betapa pantasnya adaptasi teknologi di kalangan PKS kita. Niaga AWANI dan Unify Business akan menyelami perjalanan kebangkitan semula PKS kita melalui segmen Jiwa SME setiap Selasa dan Khamis untuk inspirasi anda.
Informasikan perniagaan dengan Unify Business, rakan digital pilihan anda. Hubungi kami sekarang dan jimat sehingga 50%. Jom Unify Business.
Welcome back. The Taliban marked the first anniversary of their return to power in Afghanistan, following a turbulent year which saw women's rights crushed and a humanitarian crisis worsen. Exactly a year ago, the hardline group captured Kabul after their nationwide offensive against government forces ended 20 years of US-led military intervention.
Since then, the Taliban have focused on imposing hardline policies, similar to those seen during the group's first brutal regime, which lasted from 1996 until the US invasion in 2001. The economy collapsed last year, driven by the withdrawal of international donor funding, as well as the freezing of billions of dollars of Afghan central bank assets by the United States. Roughly 25 million Afghans are now living in poverty, more than half of the country's population, while the United States estimates that up to 900,000 jobs could be lost this year. Among those who are out of jobs were thousands of now unemployed soldiers from the former Afghan security. With the group's return to power, girls were not allowed to study above 6th grade, and many women in governmental posts were also not allowed to work.
South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol offered economic assistance to North Korea if it abandons its nuclear weapons program. In a speech marking the anniversary of the Korean Peninsula's liberation from Japan, he says the North's denuclearization would be key for lasting peace in the region. Yoon detailed a large-scale aid plan that would include food and fuel, as well as help in modernizing infrastructure such as ports, airports and hospitals. He avoided criticism of the North just days after it threatened deadly retaliation on South Korea. Yoon also called for better ties with Japan, describing the two countries as partners in navigating challenges to freedom. His speech comes days after North Korea declared victory over COVID-19, but blamed the South for the outbreak. It claims initial infections were caused by leaflets and other objects flown across the border by South Korean activists. A Myanmar junta court sentenced deposed leader Aung San Suu Kyi to 6 years in prison after finding her guilty in 4 corruption cases. This is the 4th round of criminal verdicts against Suu Kyi since the military seized power in a 2021 February 1st coup.
A special court inside a prison compound in the capital Naypyidaw found her guilty of 4 corruption charges related to a charity named after her late mother. The 77-year-old was convicted of misusing funds from the Daw Kinchi Foundation, an organization she founded promoting health and education, to build a home and leasing government-owned land at a discounted rate. This is according to people familiar with the matter, who spoke anonymously because the proceedings are not public. Suu Kyi's total jail term is now at 17 years, removing any chances of a political comeback while the junta is in power.
China's military carried out more exercises near Taiwan today as a group of US lawmakers visited the Chinese-claimed island and met President Tsai Ing-wen. China says the exercises were a stern deterrent to the US and Taiwan, whom it claims are playing political tricks and undermining peace and stability across the Taiwan Straits.
The 5 US lawmakers, led by Senator Ed Markey, arrived in Taipei on an unannounced visit late yesterday. This was the second high-level group to visit, following that of US House of Representatives Speaker Nancy Pelosi in early August. China raged against Pelosi's visit to Taipei, sending warships, missiles and jets into the waters and skies around its self-ruled neighbour. Beijing claims democratically governed Taiwan as its own territory. Meanwhile, the US has no formal diplomatic ties with Taiwan, but is bound by law to provide the democratically governed island with the means to defend itself.
The young people today view university qualifications the same way as previous generations. Tonight on Consider This, we ask our guests how to address the perception that furthering studies doesn't necessarily lead to better employment outcomes. That is all we have for you on AWANI tonight. I'm Farhana Sheikh. Thank you for watching.